This is going to be such a fun conversation. I'm here with Ryan and Kayla North, who are two of my favorite people. They are over a group called One Big Happy Home. And I've known Ryan and Kayla now for several years. We used to know each other back in Texas, worked together in a couple different ways. And I learned a lot from Ryan about just doing church ministry, foster and adoptive church ministry, and just got to hear a lot from them about their family. They hosted the first adoption conference. I don't know if I ever told you guys this. They hosted the first adoption conference that my wife and I went to as we were starting to think about adopting. We came to Tapestry at Irving Bible Church. Yeah, we were kind of on the edge trying to figure things out and went there, and that helped us kind of continue to process those things. So, yeah, so they're here. We're going to chat for a little while about some different things and just kind of talk through some things that life is going on for families that are adoptive and the ways life has changed. So I'll let you guys take a minute. You guys just want to introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about your family for a minute so folks know kind of who you are and what's going on in your life.
Yeah, sure. You want to do it? You want me to do it?
I'll start.
And I'll fill in the blanks.
There we go. I'm Joe Buck. She's Troy Aikman. For those of you who remember watching sports on TV. So yeah, we've been married almost 20 years now. And before we got married, we were having the conversation about kind of what building our family would look like. We both discovered that the other person wanted to adopt. There's this family history on both sides surrounding adoption and foster care. And so that was something that was important to both of us coming into our marriage. And so we were foster parents for about 10 years, and about 30 kids in our home through that time. Most of them, we're trying to get permanency in 6 months, 12 months, 4 years later, kind of, we had like really some long-term foster placements. Mm-hmm. And we have 6 children, 4 adopted from the foster care system in the state of Texas, and then 2 bio kiddos in the mix as well. And we built our family at a really interesting time, because when we first started, nobody really gave any thought to sort of other than drugs and alcohol, really. Nobody really gave thought to what the in utero experience was and how that had lifelong impacts on the children. And right around the time our now 17-year-old son joined our family, something called Empower to Connect was being formulated. Tapestry at Irving Bible Church that you mentioned earlier, which now my wife is the executive director of that as well, on top of her One Big Happy Home duties. And Tapestry had collaborated with Karen Purvis, and Empower to Connect was created in the midst of all of that. And so when they piloted that class, they asked our family to participate. And we got to meet people get very jealous when I tell them that when we did ETC, Karen Purvis came to class. And so
she really did. It was really fun.
And so, our daughter was in one of those neurotransmitter studies at TCU, and we decided that and so this is what it was. Will you parent a child with TBRI principles exclusively for 12 months, and then to test whether that actually makes a difference in a chemical level in a child, with all the neurotransmitter testing. And so we can tell you today that it does, which is the really, really great news, that it does actually change a person at a chemical level if you will focus on building a relationship above all else. And so in the midst of all of that, Kayla's like, well, let's journal to keep ourselves honest. I said, are you like a million years old? Blogs were just becoming a thing at the time. I said, what are these blogs? They must have been called weblogs when we started doing this.
They probably were, because I was like, what are you talking about? Why do you spend time reading what other people have to say on the internet? That's weird. Read a book.
Who would ever do that?
I know, right? I can't. It's so funny though now. He's really good at like predicting things that are going to like become a thing when it comes to technology. So I've stopped like fighting him on those things.
Don't tell us now, but when we get done, Ryan, I'd like to know your predictions.
I mean, who could have ever thought that staring at a screen and wasting your time would catch on? So not wasting your time, reading blogs, very good.
Yes.
So Kayla wanted to call our blog.
Please keep watching this video. It's very
important.
Right. Okay, yeah, because you've watched everything on your Netflix already. So
yeah,
this is new entertainment. And so And so we started the blog, and Kayla wanted to call it One Big Happy Home blog, because she was it was almost like she was claiming a prophetic word over our family, because that's what she wanted. Little did I know that she wanted 6 children. That's what she meant by big. I just thought she meant the size of the house. She meant the number of occupants, and she wanted it to be happy. And then a few years ago, we decided to turn that into a company and just keep the name, and we create products under that umbrella. And so, it's been a fun ride, Blaine. We've got an opportunity to meet a lot of great people, to be mentored by a lot of great people, and learn a lot along the way in terms of, our education, and also, having to live this every day.
Yeah.
Our home is really our lab. Did I miss anything?
It is. No, you did a good job.
I didn't mention the children. I probably missed that.
Well.
Oh yeah, and you've got some kids.
We've got some kids. We have 6 kids. The oldest will be 18 this year, and then the youngest will be 8. So there's about a 10-year span between them, and then we have one in the mix who is she has some pretty severe special needs as a result of some abuse that she suffered, and so she's precious and sweet and giggles, but she's nonverbal, and so she's more like about like a 2-year-old in most regards. So she runs everywhere. So I always tell people, I'm like, she's like a perpetual toddler. So think about having a toddler that just keeps getting taller and able to reach and get into more things. And that's what she does. So it's been quite interesting the last few weeks having her home, because she's normally at school. We homeschool 5 of our kids, but she goes to school every day. And so it's been really interesting having her home during all of this, because there's not like I can just sit her in front of a video to watch what her class is doing, although we are going to start those this week. So it should be interesting to see how that goes.
See how much time and attention you can actually get into.
Yeah, I think she'll be excited to see her classmates and her teacher, because she loves school. I mean, she has one-on-one aid at school, and so she's in kind of a self-contained classroom, and so she has lots of fun and loves going to school. So I'm sure she's really confused why she hasn't been going to school, why she's at home, and just she wants everybody to play with her, because normally when she's at home for extended amounts of time, nobody else is doing schoolwork. They're all on break, and they can play with her and they can do stuff, and we go places. And so for her now, they're all trying to get their schoolwork done, because we have 2 high school, 2 middle school, and then an elementary school that we're all trying to get stuff done. So they all have, pretty full workloads that they're still doing. And so she doesn't quite understand why everybody's not paying attention to her all the time.
Also, I would like to thank Kayla for saying that we homeschool. I sometimes help with math.
Yeah.
Although to be honest,
I've been doing a lot more the last 4 weeks, because he's home every day. I'm like, go sit with Dad. He can help you on that one.
Well, and I mean, it's been really good. You can't tell from this shot, but my lovely wife has a knee brace on because she can't have a surgery to reconstruct her ACL, because that's non-essential currently. But
right before a pandemic is a really bad time to tear your ACL.
I would imagine that.
On the Saturday prior to the Monday when shelter in place started happening. So, and Blaine, I don't know if we have time to tell that story about how Kayla hurt her ACL, but
no, we probably don't.
Oh, we do.
That's like a long story.
That's awesome, Blaine.
Short story. I went skiing, hadn't been skiing in 20 years, fell on a green, and tore my ACL, my MCL, and
sure.
Just minor injury.
And I did not fall. And you want to know why, Blaine? Because I'm 44.
You didn't ski?
That's right. I'm like,
exactly right.
I've had 6 concussions. I told her, she said, "Are you going to ski with me?" I said, "I've had 6 concussions." And she said, "You'll be wearing a helmet." And I said, "My concussions don't care about your helmets." Luckily, because I would have fallen, whacked my head or something like that.
Yeah, then we would have both come home injured. It would have been
ugly, there was no way. There was no way. It's like we're almost at the point now where we don't want to fly together, because that way, if like something bad happens, then there's always a surviving parent with the kids.
That's horrible. I know.
Well, I mean, it's horrible, but Donald
Yeah.
Trump and Mike Pence are never in the same vehicle ever. I mean, that's why I heard
It's the
about
same
that.
logic. Yeah.
Yeah, the president and the vice president don't ever travel together for the same reason, and so.
So we can't ski together is
And
what
that's
he's
I'm like,
saying, because that's a
there's
bad
no
idea.
way, because I'm like, I mean,
I probably would have taken you down with me.
I've never skied before. I went snowboarding one time, like in 1996 or something, and so yeah. But anyhow, all of that to say, she's been officing downstairs and she has, where we're from here in our room, has a little bit of space with a desk, which is typically her home office. And so I've been up here. And you're talking about the trauma and the pandemic. So I'll show you that I can stay on topic, Blaine, and bring it back to what you actually want to talk about. But Blaine's like,
well, let me back up before we get to that, because I think, man, I do want to get into like the pandemic, how life has changed. But I think it would actually be really interesting for our folks. I mean, as you're kind of describing that, and I don't know if you ever told me about being in that kind of first ETC class and Empowered to Connect and kind of getting introduced to TBRI. But I know a lot of our families at our church, like trauma is certainly a word that they've heard. It got mentioned in their foster care class. It got mentioned in the book that they read before they adopted. But the depth at which, you and you guys are still in Texas. I was there for a long time. And so TBRI, or trust-based relational intervention, was so common. It was just commonplace. Almost every agency had adopted it, was teaching it, was utilizing it, was if they weren't utilizing it, they were telling you should go get this too. You should go kind of look into this as well. But I'd be curious for you guys, just even kind of if you can think as far back as that, of kind of as that was getting introduced to you, how did it feel to go, wait, you're asking us to do what? Like, this is, in some ways, for a lot of parents, is very counterintuitive. Of kind of the practices, the style of parenting a child with trauma in different ways, and in ways that we're kind of now knowing work really well. But at the time, they were still figuring it out to a certain degree. So I wonder kind of what you guys would say of kind of how you first kind of looked at that, and when did the light bulb go off and went, wow, this is working. This is really helpful.
I will tell you that is probably an easier thing for me to answer than you may think. And that is, I don't know if your family is like ours, Blaine. We've only had the opportunity to visit with your wife one time when we were up in Louisville last year. But Kayla certainly was the driver of wanting us to foster and wanting us to adopt. And then when we did those things, wanting to find the help so that we could be the most useful in helping the children. And so I was like, oh, and then she found Tapestry and Purvis and the Connected Child. And I remember that the first Tapestry conference we went to, Karen spoke at it. And I was like, oh my gosh, this just sounds like, to me, it was like, it just sounds like if we hug the kids enough, everything, like, you're going to be Bob Marley, everything going to be all right. And so, and then I listened to Karen speak, and she really, really convinced me with one simple sentence. And she said, there's nothing special about our work. We just remember the way our grandmothers treated us, and we're trying to do that. And that really, really took root with me, because and we talk about it almost once a week, that simple thing she said, because it really was the genesis of my thinking changing. I know Kayla's had changed before that, because I thought about my grandmother, who actually was my dad's aunt. That's part of the story on my side of the family, how adoption and foster care and what would now be called a kinship placement. But he called her mama. She was the only grandmother I knew. And I remember when we'd go and spend time with her when we were kids, and I'd get out, you get out of bed and say, I'm hungry. Well, she didn't do what parents typically do and say, well, you should have eaten all your dinner. She'd say, sit at the table, sweetheart, I'll fry you a couple of eggs. I loved eating fried eggs as a child. And so she'd fry me a couple of eggs. Or if I'm scared, she'd stop what she was doing and come sit in the bed by me until I fell asleep, right? And so I'm like, okay.
She didn't have an agenda.
No.
She didn't have, she just stopped and took care of you.
And so
didn't have her own schedule going on outside of that like,
I'm sure she had things to do.
Possibly because there were no blogs for her to read. But my only point being that the more we try to be those people who say, instead of what do you want, What do you want? We now ask the kids, how can I help you? What do you need, right? Reminding them and us, we're there to help them. And when we have bedtime struggles, when we lean into being kind instead of you need to go to bed, we actually see, and this is the counterintuitive thing you were talking about, we actually see resolution. That's not what I meant, but we actually get it to the place we want it to be much quicker, and everybody's in better shape emotionally if we will just do the kind thing like grandma did. And you know, Paul wrote to the Roman church when he said, you know, it's such a famous verse, it became a song, I think, in the 90s. He said, it's God's kindness that leads us to repentance. And so if we want that to be true for us, because you better be sure I want God's kindness in my life. I do not want the other options on the table, right? But if I want a changed life, if I want my child's life to change, then it is my responsibility to be the kind person, because kindness leads to changed lives. And so that's kind of what hooked me. And now all these years later, after hearing her almost 15 years ago for the first time now, I'm still constantly reminded by that truth that she shared that day. I know I spoke a lot there for us. I'm sure Kayla has some thoughts on the answer to the question, but that's at least what did it for me. And I think that's important that we try to communicate that message, because a lot of times it's the dads who are reluctant. You know, a lot of our work is mom saying, hey, my husband's still parenting the way he was raised. And it's, you know, we've developed material and done marriage seminars, right? Because people have to know how to stay connected in marriage when doing this trauma parenting thing.
Well, and I've talked to numerous, I want to let Kayla respond too, but just to hit that dad point, like I have talked to a lot of dads who are at home now that weren't a couple weeks ago. And they are actually seeing some very surprising things happen with their kids, of like them being home, them not like trying to find ways to not feel like they've got to wall themselves off from the family for 9 hours to work, but like letting the kids come in, letting them interact. I mean, I think, you know what, if Jimmy Fallon can let his kids interrupt the Tonight Show, our work is probably not that important. And we can probably get interrupted too. You know, so realizing the sense of like how can I let myself get interrupted? I was telling you guys earlier before we taped, like I'm in my little hovel in my basement. I'm not getting my steps in or my exercise. So the other day I just went up the stairs and the kids were getting ready for lunch, and I went up there and picked up the kids and started doing squats with them and doing arm lifts. And now that's all they want to do, and I'm burnt out.
You're like,
I created a monster.
So the message is, but think it through.
Yes. Yeah. So you know, pause before you start that. But they loved it. They thought it was fun. It was this thing we did together, and it got me some exercise. You know, so it was a win-win, kind of both sides. But yeah, I do think that there is this sense of like the dad sometimes is a little resistant. And well, if you want to try that trauma strategy, you go try that, and I'll be at work or wherever. And you got to be bought in, man. You got to be bought into it. And that's not an across the board thing, because man, we've got some dads who are just awesome folks. But Kayla, what for you, like what was the selling point of like, hey, this is just so compelling?
Well, you know, I think when we initially went through all of our foster care classes, we were wanting to bring home an infant. We were wanting to just, 12 months and under, that was kind of our age group. And then we brought home an almost 4-year-old. And when we brought him home, all of a sudden we felt like we knew nothing, because everything was so different, bringing home a child who had memories and who had, could tell us about his previous foster home, could tell us, these stories that we were not a part of. And so it was probably during that time that I said, there's got to be something different than what we're doing, because we were struggling so much. And that's when we started going through just everything we could think of. And I was like, this sounds like crazy talk to me, but I'm willing to try anything at that point. And then just very simple little things that we started doing, like offering choices and compromises, and just really leaning into connecting with our kids and doing these nurturing activities and things like that. And we started seeing huge changes in our kids just from something simple as like, you know, spending a day trying not to say no, just trying to say yes as much as we could. And we were like, this is the stupidest exercise we could possibly do. Like, our kids are going to take full advantage of this and it's going to be crazy. And what we ended up with was our kids just wanted to spend time with us. They just wanted to do things with us. They weren't like, take me to the store and buy me things. They were just like, can we ride bikes? And we said, yes. Can we go to the park? And we said, yes. You know, I mean, it was just like things that we just kept saying no to. And so I think it was when we really started just saying, we're going to commit to this. We're going to try it, even though it sounds crazy. And then we saw huge dividends, and then we were all in. I mean, it was like, for me, I was just like, I don't know why anybody would do anything different. It doesn't mean it's always comes natural, though, because there are definitely times when we just revert back to what we, you know, the way we were raised or what seems easy at that moment. I remember one time I was talking to one of our doctors, and, you know, he was talking about having kids coming in, you know, that had experienced a lot of trauma. He'd asked me, I guess, what I do. And he was like, so what would you say to a parent? And he like gave me a scenario, and I explained how I might walk a parent through that scenario. And he goes, that sounds like a lot of work. And I was like,
from somebody who went to medical school.
Yeah.
This is a lot of work.
And I said, it is a lot of work, but it's so worth it. And it's not a lot of like, over time, what we've seen is that we're not spending so much time doing some of these really hard things because it's paid off. You know, last night, you know, one of our teenagers, I kind of snapped at her. It was one of those, I mean, it was Easter at home. Like, nothing was going the way I had imagined it was going to go. Right. And I kind of snapped at her at bedtime, and she went to bed, and then she comes down a little bit later, and she came and talked to me and said, you snapped at me, and I really didn't like that. And I was like, this is why we do this. Yep. You know, I mean, it's like now when we've got teenagers that will come to us and say, here's my struggle. Here's what I don't like. Here's what you did that I wish was different. I'm like, that's why we do it. You know, I mean, that's now all these years later, we're reaping the benefits, you know, of our kids having parented them this way for a long time, not perfectly, but, it has paid off. And we can now like really literally look at people and say, look, I have really good kids. Yeah. And I have really good relationships with my kids. And I think it's because of the way we have chosen to parent, you know.
Yeah. I liked when you said we have really great relationship with our children. Yeah. What I didn't like is when she said, look, we have really good kids, and pointed right at me.
We have really good kids, you know. I give him compromises and choices
and the opportunity for redo.
And the opportunity for redos, exactly.
My.
Lots and lots of redos.
Would you like to?
Our kids, like a week or so ago, were sitting at the top of the stairs, 5 and 4, having an entire conversation by themselves, telling the other that I didn't appreciate the way that you said that to me. That hurt my feelings, like this back. And Kelly was like sitting in the bedroom around the corner, just let them do it. They went on for like 12, 15 minutes, kind of negotiating this thing themselves. And it was like,
so good.
That's a win. Like, and that was our win for like the week, but that was a win. And, you know, it's really good. So yeah, I mean, I think the more you model it in the way that you're interacting with them, the more they don't. And then what I found too is, because that's the model we've set, when I am out of, like, discombobulated, when I'm dysregulated, when I'm walking up my basement stairs from like too long sitting staring at my laptop, and then my daughter does something and I snap at her, like, that meltdown's even worse, because that's not what she expects me to do. Right. That's not, like, she's come to anticipate.
Like, that's not how daddy does this.
Right. And that's not right. And that's not like, she constantly, like, in the middle of the meltdown, she does the "you hurt my feelings" stuff. And sometimes she's gotten corrected for something she definitely did do wrong, but she also feels like we hurt her feelings because she got corrected. right? And so, you know, and again, she's 4, she's still figuring it out.
Yeah.
But there's an expectation that you create as a parent that like, this is the way we are, this is who we are. And it's built in kindness, right? If that's who we are as believers, if that's who we are as parents, and then that's who our kids become, that's exactly what we should be doing. So that's cool.
Well, and I think, you know, the stuff we've already talked about, and what we'll still talk about, all of these principles are not just useful in the parent-child relationship, right? They're sound relational principles, you know, and so we kind of use them on each other, and sometimes it's annoying, and sometimes though it helps stir the ship to calmer waters instead out to a storm at sea, like the thing Kayla talked about yesterday. You know, after she kind of walked by our teenage daughter and kind of snapped at her, she went downstairs, and I'm like, hey, what's going on? And she shared, and then I just walked into the other room and like checked something on my laptop and gave her a few minutes, and then came back. And they said, hey, babe, because I know, you know, from the neuroscience that if she's flipped her alert from a neurological standpoint, right, and she's living in her limbic system where her emotions and those kinds of things live, then she can't receive she can't have a logical conversation about what happened. And so letting her share why she was upset and letting her ride that emotional wave, and then saying, hey, babe, I think you need to consider that you did snap at her coming down the stairs. And you know, and to Kayla's credit, and because obviously, you know, we've been doing this for a long time, I think I got the timing right last night. And she said, yeah, I hear that. And so when our daughter came downstairs very upset and saying, you know, I don't understand why you snapped at me on the stairs like that, they could have a conversation. And Kayla had already processed all of it and made sense of it, and said, you know what, you're right, that wasn't about you, that was about me and my disappointment and how the day had went, my frustration with being, you know, not being able to go anywhere for the last, you know, 5 weeks now. Will you please forgive me? And was able to make that right. But even, you know, if you don't understand the principle of the whole lid flipping thing, and I know, and the people who will be watching this primarily and probably heard you talk about this, Blaine, would be my guess, because you told us that, you know, you recommend and buy the whole brain child for like everybody that you meet, right? But the way that kind of works in our home is like, if a kid, this is how I was raised, and you were probably raised like this too. Like if a kid runs to the house and they you know, trip or whatever and fall and hurt themselves, parents go, ha, teachable moment. And they go over there while the kid's crying and explain to them, if I told you once, I told you 1,000 times, this is that pain you feel is what I didn't want you. Right. But how we've shifted from being those parents, it's been go to the alarm with an ice pack, sit on the ground. If the child's small enough, invite them, you know, pull them up into your lap and say, oh, I'm so sorry that you're hurt. Here's an ice pack. And then show them some kindness, which helps them ride that emotion. There's a wave of emotion. And I think a lot of times parents will come to us and say, yeah, I need you to give me how we get from point A to point B without the big emotional response. And the truth of the matter is that people have emotions, and people, especially, you know, in children, are entitled to their emotions. And so we just ride that emotional wave with them. And then when they're at a place where they're no longer struggling emotionally, and you can tell because they've stopped crying, and then you can kindly remind them why that's why we don't run in the house. And so, you know, so a simple shift like that in the way we started dealing with our kids really saw big results almost immediately. Just that little bit of kindness that we were talking about a little bit ago.
And I heard you talk about it too in another context, Ryan, where you talked about trying not to use the why question in that moment.
Why did you do that?
Yeah, why is never a helpful question in those moments, right? What happened, how it happened, like leading them down that logical path to understand that, hey, running in the house led to you running into the table, which is why you feel this way, right? And so I've now helped create the neural pathway to help you understand why we have this rule that exists, instead of, well, why would you do that? That's a terrible idea, right? And it's this accusatory kind of thing, and in a way of thinking that kids can't do at that age, trauma or no trauma, they likely don't have the ability to kind of make that pathway. So
Well, I heard recently that when the reason we need to avoid why as much as possible for as long as possible is because like you just said, is so accusatory in nature that it actually causes a slight cortisol spike. And so what you're actually doing is you really are inviting the child to lie.
Yeah.
You really are inviting them to lie, because part of the chemical balance in your brain is that that lying and feeling like you got away with it actually causes a bit of a dopamine spike. And so the way your mind actually soothes the tension is to tell untruths. And so that's why you really have to super avoid that why question, because it doesn't give you the results you want. All those other ones you mentioned, who, what, when, how, those are great questions because they actually force the child who's stuck in the right side of the brain in their emotions. It forces them over the left side of their brain where language lives. But also what lives with language is logic. And so that's kind of how we connect with them emotionally. We help regulate their emotions, and then we can reason with them.
It's like stepping them across to their left brain so that they can actually
that's the Bruce,
think about it.
That's the Bruce Perry model, right? You first you relate, you regulate, and then you can reason. But if you're not willing to relate, you can't regulate, and if you can't regulate, you really will not be able to reason with the children. So we're big believers in that in that process.
Yeah, no, that's really good. Well, talk for a minute. Like, I mean, how has life changed? You've alluded to it a little bit here already, but just in the last few weeks, you guys were homeschooling. So in some sense, there was some ways in which the kids weren't going to school. So some of that's stayed the same, but you know, Ryan's home now. So that's probably made your life really hard, Kayla. And I'm sorry for you.
It's so funny. But he said to me today, he was like, I'm going to come downstairs and I'm going to office with you at the dining room table. And it lasted about an hour before he left.
I heard you tell somebody else this on a call today. It was a full 90 minutes.
A full 90 minutes. He's like, I don't know how you get any work done. I got to go to make a phone call upstairs. You know?
She sounds Scottish. I don't know how you get any work done.
I mean, I had several phone calls while sitting at the dining room table. Now they were quite noisy and there was barking and children handing me things to open like in the call. You know, it was definitely not pretty, but it cracked me up though, because I was like, he didn't.
All that happened was my wisdom to not go skiing was affirmed and confirmed again today. Because I'm like, look, I can walk up the stairs.
Yeah, I can go wherever I want.
Go wherever I want. It doesn't even hurt me if I walk up.
Tell you what, first one to the top of the stairs gets to work up there. But you know, you talk about Ryan being home. I think part of some of the stress and dysregulation for our children is the fact that I'm home all the time. And not because of, you know, any of
he's very stressful.
The cheap jokes you two could issue, but because it's actually confirmation for the children that something's different.
Yeah.
You know, it's actually confirmation for something's different. And so the only time that I'm at home, you know, for a week at a time is if I'm on vacation. You know, and so they're like, okay, but Dad's still here. It's into week 5 now of this. And our 7-year-old has particularly had a hard time with this because she's like, okay, well, the only time Dad's home is when he has free time. Well, what do you mean you have to be in a call and the door needs to shut? So
she doesn't understand him working from home.
Yeah.
She just thinks Dad's at home, so he should give me all his attention.
So we're so you know, our bed's behind us over there, Blaine, and so most of her schooling now is she'll come and sit on the bed and do it, and I'll help her with her math, and she'll do some of the other things that she'll needs
read to him and things like that.
And then we'll take a break, and every hour we'll play a couple of hands of cards, and then she'll set a timer, and so we're just, you know, creating predictability. While also working on the relationship. And so, you know, one of those trauma principles that we talk about a lot is having high levels of nurture and structure, because really leaning into that idea and making sure that there's structure. Like every hour on the hour when the timer goes off, I'm going to stop what I'm doing and we're going to do this thing together. That has been really, really helpful for her. as well as then, come work by daddy. And then if I'll have video calls, and if they're not too stressful, I'll invite her over. So a lot of people around America have met Libby and had a conversation with her, and she feels like she's part of it. And so, I think something you said earlier was really valuable about the dads who are now at home all the time, and understanding that, it's not like going into the office. Because the first week I was at home, I'm like, I'm shutting the door at 9 o'clock. I'm coming down at 5 o'clock. Y'all leave me alone. It's like I went into the office. Well, the truth of the matter is, that had diminishing returns, because it took me a few days to realize, okay, they need to know that everything's okay, even though everything's different.
Yeah.
And so, you're right. It doesn't have to be a structured, you go up your stairs from your basement, I go down the stairs from my bedroom, and interact and invite them to come sit. I mean, I had 3 of them homeschooling in here last week, 2 sitting on the bed. And we have a couch over, a love seat in our room next to our bed, and one of them sitting over there. And then, and then they feel really special, because instead of using the Chromebooks downstairs, they get to do their math on Daddy's Mac, and then they think that's very clever. And so it's been fun. We tell people all the time that flexibility and creativity are your 2 biggest allies in any situation, and that is no more true in parenting. And it's not just parenting now, because this is a national trauma. We're all going through this together, and whether that be that you lost your job, or you got sick, or somebody got sick, or you're just scared about what happened tomorrow because the Dow Jones terrified you 2 weeks ago, because you're 64 years of age and you were getting ready to retire, and now you realize that you probably have to extend your professional career by a little bit so that the Dow, your retirement can recover. I don't know, but there's a lot of people, there are millions and millions and millions of people who are stressed right now, and the stress has been going for 5-6 weeks. And so, that's chronic stress, which is a contributing factor to complex developmental trauma. And so we just really have to embrace that that's the reality, and I have to understand how we can help people heal and how we can help people grow, because that has to happen on the other end of this. And we know that that you do a lot of work with your ministry staff over there. The first time Kayla and I ever did our training for children's ministry, Blaine was part of that, and half of the people in the room that day were because you put them in the room. And so you go back to the genesis of that with us, and we know that you teach these principles to your staff, and you're trying to help them take root. But I believe that the flip side of crisis is opportunity. And at the end of every crisis in America, everybody goes to the church for answers. I don't know if you guys remember the first Sunday the churches were open in September of 2001. We had, the worship spaces were full, all of the classes were full, and then we had some real TV carts out into the hallways so people could watch, right? This is before we were, had the internet capacity to stream online like we do now. But people do go to the church for answers, and we better be equipped to handle traumatized people when they come back, because if we're not, that's a missed opportunity. And Jesus said, "Be as gentle as doves and as wise as serpents." In the Old Testament, the Lord said that the men of Issachar were wise because they understood the times they lived in. And so God endorses understanding the world you're living in as a sign of wisdom in a person. And so we have to be those wise people, and we have to do the work in our churches so we're ready to help the families who are going to come back. Attendance is going to be up at Southeast here in a few weeks. It's going to be.
Yeah, I saw numbers today that Carrie Newhoff and Barna had released some numbers today that online church attendance is already up 30%. That they're predicting that most churches are seeing a 30% growth in attendance compared to what they would normally have in person. Because people are engaging a lot more. And so I think that's a piece of it. And I think, it's going to be a slow burn of how this thing ends, which also means that people are still going to be nervous and on edge.
Yeah, absolutely.
And anxious about going out in public, and anxious about being in spaces with other people. And so, how how we engage them, how we respond to them, how we prepare to invite them back into our spaces is going to have to look a little different for us. And we've got to think a lot about what that looks like, and how to help people feel comfortable, how to help them stay connected where they are right now, but then also how to kind of make them feel comfortable as things go back to normal. It's and I think the thing I was talking about yesterday with the group too is that the thing that I think that's getting under people's skin a little bit more now is that the uncertainty of how long this is going to go. Yeah. Like, I think when we first got started, we all were kind of thinking, okay, well, we're looking at like 4 weeks of this, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Middle of April, we'll be fine. Everything will be back to normal. Maybe May.
Right.
And now we're like, maybe June, July.
Right. Can we put
fall.
those June events out a little bit further?
Yeah.
We'll be like, well, will this all go back to normal when school reopens in the fall?
Right. I mean, I've had things get rescheduled into September, and I was like, I don't know what September looks like. That's forever away from here.
Right.
But it's that same thing you talk about, that right predictability, right? Predictability and routine are things that not only like our kids with trauma thrive on, but we thrive on. Like, we want to know how we can plan, and we can't. And we can't plan for those things. And so then that creates this uncertainty about the future that then also makes me feel uncertain and anxious for the moment I'm in right now. Right. Yeah. And so both layers of that, I think, are happening together, but it's often hard to see. I think it's often hard, especially for adults and for parents, to kind of see that going on in your own brain and in your soul. Like that's really getting to me, that I can't kind of make a plan.
Well, that was kind of the first week of kind of the shelter in place. I've described to several people, I felt like kind of like a hamster on a wheel. Like I was trying to make lists and make plans and switch things into online mode because we had classes and things like that. And I kept making these lists, but I wasn't getting anywhere with them. I kept scheduling phone calls and then I'd forget about them. And I mean, I felt like I was very just disoriented. It all seemed so strange that I didn't even know how to make sense of it. And our kids are like that, and a lot of people were trying to just throw their kids into school and like doing schoolwork. Now, for us, the first week of shelter in place actually was like spring break for us. So we already had a natural break of we're taking this week off anyways. But even though we homeschool, we have changed how we're doing things a lot. Like we have backed off on a bunch of things, and just, things just look different at our house than they have before because the kids needed it to look different. I mean, for a couple of weeks, we did a lot of, science was like, Magic School Bus Rides Again on Netflix, here you go. That it was kind of that kind of stuff.
History was Liberty's Kids.
Yeah. I mean, it was
I love that show, by the way. It's
Liberty's
one of my
Kids.
shows on Netflix.
But we did. It was like, we're going to watch some videos. We're just going to read a book together. We're going to, it just looked really different because our kids were kind of like those hamsters in a wheel. Like my adult brain, it took me a week to kind of wrap my mind around what was going on. It's taking our kids a lot longer. And some of them are just now getting to the place where they can even process it and where they can say, one of our teenagers last night was just like, it's just been so weird since spring break, like not even knowing how to put the words to it. The fact, our kids are used to seeing, we usually, have lunch with his parents once a week and have dinner with my parents once a week. We've tried to do Zoom calls. That's just mass chaos with all the family.
Worst TV show I've ever been seen.
It was horrible. It was really bad. We put it up on the TV because we're like, we'll put it up there, then everybody can see everybody. It was horrible.
Well, at one point, it looked like my in-laws were literally just watching, like we had a camera watching that because they didn't say anything. They were just watching the entertainment.
Staring, and it was just crazy.
This is the worst show on TV. I can't believe you're this interested.
But, that's, the kids are, everything's different, It's like they're seeing their classmates on a screen because we do a co-op. And so they've been doing Zoom calls with our co-op teachers and they're seeing everybody on a screen. Play dates. That is probably the funniest thing we've done virtually is play dates with cousins and neighbors, where each one has gotten on an iPad or some kind of a tablet, and they literally are not talking to each other like we're doing. They have flipped it around and it's pointing at the toys they're playing with.
Yes.
And they're just talking through this scene. Oh, I'm going to build, da, 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 da. Oh, here, have yours come over here. Oh, you do this. I mean, today they were like coding on some game on, they literally were just
MIT has some like kid stuff, and you can basically, you know, it's not writing code, but just taking little modules of code.
Yeah.
You know, it's like kind of like when we were kids.
Animate things.
Yeah, I know I'm a little older than you guys, but you remember when you used to have like the logo thing, when you'd like the squid, like, you know, and do you guys remember like the logo coding language? It was a little turtle that would do.
Oh yeah. Okay. I did that in one of my classes in college.
You're really old.
Really old. We're old. We're super old.
But MIT has kind of something like that, and her friend across the street are really into it, and they were, you know, coding some stuff today. But the cutest part of all of this was, for me today, was when two of our daughters were standing in our front yard, and their friend across the street was standing in hers, and they were yelling at each other back and forth
across
having a conversation. It was adorable. Hey, you know, Blaine, one of the things that we've talked about is at the end of this, we hope that empathy and compassion for our kids is on the increase. Now, I know that it's not going to be. It will be for a few weeks. Everybody will go to church for a few weeks, and then things will go back to the way they've been, because we'll forget how hard this was. But I hope what we will remember is that feeling, that hamster on the wheel thing that Kayla was talking about, that feeling of being powerless to control your future, of not knowing what's going to happen next, not knowing what's going to happen to you. That feeling that adults have been feeling, that's how our kids feel all the time, like on a good day. And so I hope that when we go back to it, we'll have so much more compassion for the kids, because we will at least now be able to have real empathy, because we've walked in those shoes of not knowing what tomorrow is going to be like. You know, there were rumors on Friday that the governor was going to lift some of the emergency status here in Texas and have like a strategic rollout of opening the economy again. Well, he doubled down on the emergency measures today. So I don't know. Right. Again, and we're pretty low stress people.
Yeah.
And so we're trying to just, you know, our motto in our home right now is, which is faith over fear, but we're not going to be foolish, right? Which is, we're gonna be gentle and shrewd at the same time, like Jesus suggested. But even in the midst of that, where I don't think I have very many manifestations, and I'm trying to take deep breaths before I interact with the children, but I don't think I'm sleeping very well. Like no matter how much we sleep, I wake up as tired as I did the day before, and my body's not shutting down properly. I'm internalizing the stress, I guess. And then the irony of that, of course, is that a spike in your stress leads to a decrease in your immune system. Right? And so we have to be really, really careful, because we have to manage our stress in healthy and appropriate ways, because if we don't, we actually make ourselves more susceptible to getting this thing.
To the thing that we're scared of getting.
Yeah.
Right?
And so that's why, you know, go for walks, enjoy the fresh air, get some vitamin D. Vitamin D boosts your immune system, and the walking reduces your stress. I mean, you know,
I think it's trying to realize too that, like, I think sometimes we think we're the only ones feeling this way in the stress, right? And so giving yourself that freedom to realize, like I don't have to get as much done as I normally did on a normal work day, because nobody else is either. And like, nobody's family is living and working perfectly either, no matter what that picture of Easter Sunday looked like. I'm sorry, that was staged. Had to be. Or it had to be like, that was a picture of a magazine that you took, and there's no way.
I was going to say, you should see the roll of pictures that were taken up to the one that we, you know, actually would share with people, of people going, you know, like eye roll, and seriously, get in the picture so we can take this picture right now. You know, I mean, yeah, we were all stressed, and you know, always tell people, like, what people put on Facebook is not reality. So, you know, we can't compare to those things, because we're all feeling it. We're all, you know, we're all feeling the impacts of this. in whatever way, you know, that looks like for each family.
And I should have seen the new James Bond movie at least twice by now and have to wait till October.
I know, it's terrible.
Your life is hard.
It's hard, right?
No, I think, I think what you said, Ryan. I mean, I think it is so profound that that we take for granted the things we think we have control and power over, and in many ways we don't actually, if we really want to get down into it. Like we really don't have as much control as we think we do, but we've managed to create this context in which we do. And our kids, you know, many of trauma or not trauma, you know, our kids don't have a lot of control over their lives.
Have
and that's
adults
what they're looking for.
what they do.
What they do.
Like,
which is why I mean, I don't tie the whole thing up in a nice little bow, but it goes back to the power of yes, right? That's why that's so profound for kids, because they hear no so much and they have so little control that then they go, wait, what? You're going to say yes?
Say yes,
or the yes jar, right? Putting the stuff, putting the goodies or whatever or activities in a jar that a kid can always pull out and say get a yes for every time. Like, man, there is some power in that, and some things. I know when I talk to the staff, and I think I got this from you guys, of like even just a children's room of like having toys out that the kids can play with when they come in, and you can play with that or that or that.
Yeah.
What? I can? Like I've set the fence. You can play with anything you want inside the fence.
Yeah.
Go play with it.
Yep.
And I've set it up, but they feel like there's such power and control in that sense. And I think for all of us that fence is getting a little tighter around us. Yeah. And that's why that stress is there. Is like, wait. I used to be able to go do all of that stuff over there. And now all I can do is see it. And I can't touch it, and I can't go over there, and I can't do that.
You want what you can't have, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's, we talk about that with kids. Like they want the thing that you put in the cookie jar, and you say you can't eat those cookies until after dinner. Well, what do they want? They want the cookies, and they want them right now. What? And that's us. You know, we're like, I want to be able to go and do X, Y, and Z, and I can't. And now I want to do it even more because I know that I can't.
Well, we've always been like that, right? I mean, in the beginning, God said, hey, go nuts. It's all yours. This is one thing. Not two, not one. There's one thing I need you to not do. Like 15 minutes later, chomp. Hey, have some of this. It's delicious.
Yeah.
Well,
I know God said, but he didn't really mean.
Right, exactly.
And you're always
I'm sure I can have a little.
Like, there's all this delicious fruit over here. Like this, the juiciest mango you've ever seen. But that's not important to me because I
just want that.
I want that thing.
Yeah. Okay. Well, good.
Wow. Well, man, I love talking to you guys. I think this is so good. It's so helpful. I know we kind of hit on a bunch of different stuff. I hope what people get from you guys is a sense of like, it does take some hard work to do what you're going to do to parent kids. But there are a lot of folks out there who've laid the groundwork that we can benefit from now and learn from and trust that, hey, what they're saying and what they're doing does work. It does take a lot of effort. It does take some work, but it does produce tremendous results. And I love what you guys said earlier of just seeing that this is, having done this for so long, this is what our kids look like today because of that. And man, that's just, it's what we talk to parents all the time, right? Making an investment in your own kids, right? For the life you want them to have, not just their spirituality, but their overall emotional health and well-being. So I know you guys have a bunch of great resources and content out there. I tell people all the time, the Empowered Parent podcast is a great way to just start because it's really short. I have often texted Ryan in the middle of the grocery store because I'm listening to it in my earbuds while I'm walking through the grocery store, and I'm mad because I think he put a camera in my house. That's where that story came from.
I need everybody to know that, like, this isn't something you're making up for the theater of interview. This is legitimately true.
I have legitimately done this on at least, I think, 2 to 3 occasions.
That is not made up. That wasn't like scripted for TV, or that is like legitimately true.
Yes.
No, it legitimately.
We don't give our cell phone numbers to everybody to do that. Just FYI. But
yeah. No, I'm special.
But Blaine,
I
special.
complain about the podcast
You
but it does. I mean, I think it does. There are moments where I'm like, oh, listen to this one. This will be good. This will help me figure out how to, how to play with my kids or how to do this thing with my kids.
Right.
And then it's like, no. All that's doing is digging up stuff that I got to go work on now. I don't like that. But I think in that short bite, right? I think I like you guys do it short.
Yeah.
In that little 30 minutes, like, hey, here's just one thing to go work on. I'm going to go work on that. And then maybe in a couple of weeks, I'll listen to another one and try to that again.
I can ask you a question, Blaine. When you have those moments, do you curse Chris Turner's name, Kayla North, or Ryan North's name?
Only Ryan. Ryan's the only, because you're usually the one talking when I get frustrated. I just want to say.
I'm reaching the dads.
You're reaching the dads.
You're reaching the dads.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I know the podcast is out there. I know you guys got some other stuff there that's coming out. So you can talk about that for a second.
Yeah. So so last year we actually we have some friends who said that's not your kitchen when they watched this, but we actually rented a condo in downtown Dallas for a couple of days and set it up as a television studio, and recorded something we're calling Illuminate, which is a 6-part trauma masterclass for parents. Because of the COVID situation, those are typically released every one episode per week for 6 weeks. We've actually made all 6 weeks available, and there's stuff to do with your kids. There's additional resources, some questions for reflection, activities to do with your kids. So that's available, and people can purchase that. And then we also we're working on debuting an in-person course. One of the problems with a lot of the stuff that's out there is some of the rules surrounding it is they only actually let these things are allowed to be taught in classroom settings, and so they have to be people live in the room with you. We're not necessarily, I mean, we see the value in that and are big fans of that, but it's not the only way. And so one of the things we're happy about is that people are more and more comfortable now interacting this way than we were a month ago. And so we decided that we're actually going to move some stuff up in the timeline, and we're actually, before we make that class available in person, we're actually going to start teaching it live on the internet. It's something we call Build, because we want to talk about building a foundation of connection in your home. And Blaine, if it's okay with you, we'll send you those links, and then we'll add Southeast as a 20% discount code for the folks at your church.
So cool.
We hear that. But if you take the course that starts on the 22nd of April at 6 weeks, live training in Zoom, and we're also, it's about 9 hours, so you can get training certificate for foster parents, and with some of the other resources. But there's a couple of things that we're really kind of excited about, and that is if you take the live course, we'll throw in 1 year of access to the Trauma Masterclass for free. Plus, we'll throw in an hour of Zoom online coaching with me and or Kayla, depending on how that looks. I know that's just an hour, but we're hoping that at least can help some folks. And then the other thing that by the time this airs will be live is we're actually putting out that we're actually put a team of folks together that we've been working with for a long time, and are actually going to do some remote parent coaching with some folks. And so there's a cost to all of that, of course, but with the parent coaching, we really feel like if people are struggling, then we can work with people here in the interim and get that to a place where they're able to access it, because we don't want people to struggle, because if somebody lost their job, it's more stressful. So if you're in that situation and you want to access any of these resources, just email us at info@OneBigHappyHome and say, look, I'd love to access these resources, but we are really on a spending freeze because one of us lost our job in the home. And then obviously we'll do what we have to help people get access to the resources. So we've got the Trauma Masterclass for parents, the live 6-week class starting on the 22nd of April called Build, and then the parent coaching with our team of folks from all over the country in all different time zones. So I'll email all of that to you. That's okay, Blaine. And then
Perfect.
Discount code Southeast on the classes, they can get 20% off the cost of those.
Yeah. Man, I think it's great. I love that you guys are putting more out there. I love listening to you guys. I've learned so much from you in the time that we've gotten to spend together in the podcast in all kinds of ways. Just that's helped me grow both as a parent, both as a husband, and as a ministry leader to our families. It's lots of great stuff that I have used frequently. So I appreciate that you guys are spending the energy. I know it takes a lot of time to put that content together.
Yeah.
But man, it's going to be such a blessing to so many families. And so that's so awesome, so incredible. So, hey, thanks so much for spending some time with us. And I hope that the folks that listen, that you got some good stuff out of it. We'll put links below on YouTube and on Facebook to the content that Ryan just mentioned. And I hope that you guys will pursue it and check it out. So